Welcome to another episode of Grateful by Lady Law. We're glad you're here. So today I have a very special guest, Liz Neeley. Liz is the executive director of the Nebraska State Bar Association. Yeah. Liz and I have been trying to have our memories recollect when we first met. I think it had to have been sometime probably around, I graduated in 2011, and I think it was probably a couple years after that. Okay. So I think it's been over a decade.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've met so many lawyers in your role that I'm sure that, it's hard to remember when you meet everybody.
Sure.
But Liz, thanks for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me, Mandy. I feel like your message of gratitude is wonderful, and I'm honored to have been asked to participate. So thank you.
Well, thank you. So I, of course, wanted you to be here because you have such a huge leadership role in the state of Nebraska, being the executive director of the Nebraska State Bar Association, but also you're just a genuinely nice person and just have become a dear friend. So I think it's just important for my listeners to kind of hear more about you and more about the State Bar in Nebraska, because some of the things that you've accomplished in the past decade or longer that you've been there have just been really huge for the state of Nebraska. And I don't think people realize how much the State Bar does and what it contributes really to just the whole community in Nebraska.
Oh, thank you for that.
You ready to talk about all that?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's jump in.
Let's get started. Okay. So I guess we could start, and we might jump around, all over the place, but how did you become the executive director of the State Bar?
So I'm going to back up kind of a little bit. So I am not a lawyer. I think a lot of people assume that I went the traditional path and got involved that way. But I actually have a PhD in sociology from the University of Nebraska. And when I had my very first year of graduate school, I had this kind of aha moment. And I saw all this really fantastic research being done by sociologists and others in academia that had such real world implications, right? Like, this information would be so impactful for policymakers and decision makers, and just better inform government and the way that things function. But it felt like it never got to those people, right? So, and then we have all these decision makers making decisions without data, without all these things that could inform them. And so I had this moment where I was like, I don't really want to be in academia. I want to be the connector or the bridge between all this really great theory and research and help that to make better public policy. So after my first year in graduate school, I was kind of seeking out a summer opportunity, and I got hired by the University of Nebraska's Public Policy Center. And they had just been contracted with by the Nebraska Supreme Court and Nebraska State Bar Association to do a study on racial and ethnic fairness in the court system.
All right.
And so I started working with the Nebraska State Bar Association in that capacity. At that time, I was probably 22 years old. And it was just the most magnificent experience. So it was a commission of lawyers and judges from across the state. And we would convene, we did focus groups, we did surveys, we discussed and debated the intricacies of all sorts of probation, language access, juvenile justice, components of access and fairness. And so to be a young person surrounded by all of those leaders of the profession, I just felt like a sponge. Like, I just couldn't take enough of it in. And they were debating how to fix these really complex problems. And at that point, I love working with lawyers. They are smart. They are problem solvers.
Not everyone will say that.
I know, which I think makes me uniquely fantastic for my job.
Right.
I love lawyers. And so I after the summer internship ended, I was invited to continue on with the Public Policy Center and stay through the entirety of that research initiative. And then after I graduated and finished my PhD, they invited me to staff the implementation of that initiative. And so I had an office in the State Bar Association. My job was to help the Supreme Court and the State Bar act on the recommendations that were made by that task force. And we got to do some really rewarding and impactful things. I'll just share one example. So we had data that looked at our jury pools representative of the communities that they serve. And we found kind of two things that were interesting. One, there was no requirement in state statute at that time that counties refresh their jury pool lists. So we had some counties in Nebraska that had not updated the list to call jurors from anywhere from 5 to 15 years.
Wow.
And if you live in a county like, Saline or Schuyler that had undergone a pretty significant demographic shift, the jury pool was just not reflecting the community that it served, and for something that could be fixed really easily, right? So we were able to, propose a statutory change that did an annual or biannual requirement of refreshing that jury pool lists. The other thing that we changed was at that time, state ID card holders was not a source list, so we used eligible voters, eligible drivers. But if you don't have a driver's license and you have a state ID card, you were not eligible for jury service. So we added that, and it made 70,000 more people in Nebraska eligible for jury service, and 70% of that 70,000 were people from more diverse backgrounds. Right. And so we were able to say, make some pretty significant changes to the process to make it more inclusive for people to participate in a really important process, the democratic process of serving on a jury. So really, really rewarding experience. Yeah. I feel like I'm kind of taking you on a very long journey here, but I'll just keep going.
I think this is so important because I don't think people realize this change. I mean, all the behind the scenes things that it goes to make these changes that really impact our whole legal system.
Correct. Yeah. So I loved working with the Minority Justice Committee. So I was technically employed by the Public Policy Center, but I worked for the State Bar and the Supreme Court this whole time. And I did that for quite a while. And then the University of Nebraska was facing some pretty significant budget changes, budget cuts. Yeah. And I was put in the position where I needed to go to my clients. I was doing some public defender workload studies and grant writing and evaluation for some other people too. And they put me in this position where I was going to have to go to my clients and say, gosh, I love working with you. This is going really great. Next year, it's going to cost you double.
Yeah.
And
what an uncomfortable conversation.
Yeah. And I was just I wouldn't pay that. Why, this is, So I made a, really difficult choice to leave the University of Nebraska Public Policy Center and start my own company.
Oh, wow.
And these are the people I want to work for, right? I want to work for public defender offices. I want to work for the State Bar. I want to work, with this kind of legal community. And if I want to keep, stay in this work, I need to make that change and, kind of bet on myself and set this up and do it myself. So I did that, and I still continue to work in justice-related kind of facilitation and for the State Bar and Supreme Court. And then several years after that, the executive director of the Nebraska State Bar at that time, Jane Schoenecke, she had been in that position, I think, for 17 years, announced she was going to retire. And, so by this time, I know all these processes, I know all these players, I really enjoy working in the legal field. And so I decided to kind of put my name in the hat and see how that goes. And I was, just very humbled to be picked because I wasn't a lawyer. And I think that was traditionally, today there's, it's maybe half and half among state bars who employ people who are not lawyers. But I was also only 35 years old when they hired me. And so I feel like they, took a chance on me, and it's been a great fit. So that's my very long story of how I got to where I'm at.
I love it. There's so much that I wasn't even aware of. And it's so impressive. The fact that you started your own company and realized the need, and that's what you wanted to do, and you did it. I mean, that initiative alone is incredible.
I will just say, I always appreciate having conversations with people that make that leap, because you are kind of in a position, I feel like people in a law firm situation would feel this too. You know, am I getting this work because of the university or because people want to work with me, right? And so you're really in a position where you are betting on yourself, right? Like, and it's can be very intimidating, but it's also so rewarding. And it was a great experience. I got a lot out. I learned a lot. Right. I learned that, you know, doing things like figuring out how to process payroll. I mean, those are just like all the little things about running a small business that you have just enjoyed not having to worry about until that point. So it was a great experience.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
And that's translate to what you do now. I mean, you've got the budget and everything to deal with. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to be the executive director and what your role is there.
Yeah. So the Nebraska State Bar Association, headquartered in Lincoln, and our mission is really to help Nebraska lawyers be as professional and ethical and competent as possible, and also to improve and expand, improve the administration of justice, expand access to justice. And so we have, like a suite of programs and services meant to, fill those roles, whether it's getting lawyers, their continuing legal education or other resources that are going to support them in their practice. But we also have a gazillion committees working on things. So if I, think about how people come to be engaged in the Nebraska State Bar Association, for some people, it's a transactional relationship. Like they need something like a continuing legal education program or health access to our health insurance or to a publication. But for other people, it's the connection. And so being able to meet people in your practice area, find a job, find a mentor, right? Get that referral network, that there's a role that the Bar Association plays in just connecting lawyers. And I feel like that's becoming increasingly important because it feels like the law can be a very isolating profession anyway, right? So it's long hours. It's an adversarial process. And now we've got this additional layer of, we're not standing around in the courtroom together, we're appearing by Zoom, right? And so the ability to provide a sense of community among lawyers and connection among lawyers, I feel is an important role for the bar. But there's kind of two other things that really speak to me. I think one of the most important things that the Bar Association does is shapes the future of the practice or shapes the future of the law. And so for some lawyers, that is practice area specific. So I joined the bar so that I can help inform the future of the probate code, right? Or whatever that might look like.
Right.
But for other lawyers, it's the larger questions facing the profession. So, are we going to allow guardians ad litem to not be lawyers? Are we going to adopt the uniform bar exam? Are we going to have merit selection for judges, or are we going to have elected judges? I mean, like all of these things that really shape the future of what the profession looks like. The Bar Association weighs in on, it develops those proposals. And I think it's interesting. It's like the conversation just evolves. And so like looking to the future, what does the practice of law look like with artificial intelligence? Right. What does the practice of law look like with declining populations of lawyers in rural areas? What does we have a lot of states adopting allied legal professionals or, allowing non-lawyers to do certain areas of practice. What does that look like? And so I feel like that's the kind of work that I get really excited about in terms of the ability for the profession to weigh in on its future as a profession. I really enjoy that. And then, finally, I feel like there are another subset of lawyers that really get involved in the bar for its access to justice commitment. So not every state bar association has this, but we have just an amazing volunteer lawyers project. It was established in the 80s So it's been a huge part of our bar association for a very long time. And their role is to connect lawyers with pro bono opportunities. They've just built amazing programs and, from clinics to the tenant assistance project to case placement. But we're also doing a lot of things in other spaces, trying to assist civil legal providers like legal aid with their funding challenges, access in rural areas, judicial resource challenges. And so this access to justice, I think, speaks to a lot of lawyers. And they're, how do I make an impact in this area? You can do it with your bar association, right? We're connecting people and giving them opportunities to do those things. So,
yeah. And I'm always appreciative of the emails that I get with those reminders of what is available so that you can volunteer. And
thank you for saying that, because I feel like I'm I send every lawyer a million emails a year, so it's nice to know that someone reads them.
Yes, I do. Yes, and it does remind me of there is this need, and even though I'm busy, you should step up in some way.
Sure.
Yep. So that's wonderful.
Good.
When you talk about there's so many different programs and so many different ways to be involved. I know there's all kinds of committees. There's also the House of Delegates.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about some of those different things and kind of how attorneys are selected or can be volunteer for them?
Yep. So the Bar Association's kind of governance structure is there is a House of Delegates, which is the policy-making body of the association. So they establish our position on legislation, adopt the budget. If we're going to petition the court for rule changes, it has to go through the House. And there is one representative for every 60 lawyers in Nebraska. And that's done by judicial district. So we have a lot of delegates from Omaha. Yeah. About 50% of the lawyer population is in the Omaha metro area. And then we have rural districts that maybe just have a few or a handful of delegates.
How many total do you know?
Just about 100 delegates statewide. And I think that there's a really strong rationale for that model, and that is if we are going to petition the court for a rule change or get involved in legislation, you have a very diverse group of lawyers from all over the state, all different practice areas, people on both sides of issues. And if they can come to an agreement that something makes sense for the legal community, there's a vetting process that you naturally have a diverse set of voices weighing in on that. So the House of Delegates is a great opportunity, especially just to stay current on what's happening in terms of statutory changes and what's happening in the profession.
And I'm a member.
Yes.
And so I've seen, I actually have been there during one meeting where it was a topic that there was very polar opposite viewpoints. And to watch the discussion that happened during that, to then finally get to the end decision was just phenomenal. And it really gave me faith in our profession, that even though there was a level of civility and professionalism there, and I think, having the governing body there too, to kind of make sure that happens, but it is effective the way it's structured.
Yeah. So we also have an executive council. So the House of Delegates only meets a couple times a year. The executive council handles more of the day-to-day operations of the association. So they're meeting more frequently and a lot of times working through the issues of proposals before they get to that House of Delegates level. So it's a more of a time commitment, but similar types of questions and issues that are presented to them.
And that's like a president. What are the different?
Yeah. So there's, so the president is a 4-year track, president-elect designate, president-elect, president, past president, and then the chair of the House, same chair-elect designate, chair-elect, chair, and then past chair. And then there's 6 representatives from each of the 6 Supreme Court districts. And then we have a couple ex officio members. The Young Lawyers Section chair is on the executive council, and the Chief Justice of the Nebraska Supreme Court, so we can kind of keep that relationship with the court. So
the distribution of representation is just, this is such a well thought out,
very thoughtful with geography in mind, I would say. So then the Bar Association has a variety of committees. Some, I kind of sort them into 3 buckets. One is like the administrative side of the house. So like budget, nominations, elections. Then we have a number of committees meant to focus on that part of our mission that's professional enhancement. So we have a committee that plans our annual meeting and is the editorial board for our magazine and, looks at continuing legal education and all of those things that fall into that. And then we have a number of committees focused on access to justice issues. So rural practice, the Volunteer Lawyers Project, judicial resources, those types of things. And then the fifth kind of piece of our governance structure is sections. So there are 30 sections of the Nebraska State Bar Association. Most of them are practice area specific. So, family law, workers' comp, real estate. And a few of them are affinity groups. So young lawyers, senior lawyers, women, diversity. But the sections to me are really the lifeblood of the association. It's how people build their network, get resources specific to their practice area, weigh in on legislation, build the network, those types of things. And each of those 30 sections, has its own chair. They have their own dues and budget, their own executive committees. And so they're like mini bar associations for that practice area. And so, when you add all of this up, I think we calculated once that there's like over 800 distinct leadership opportunities within the State Bar Association, wow. Which is just,
in Nebraska,
when you count it up, it's just this overwhelming number. But I feel like the message there is we've got a place for everyone, right? If you are interested in becoming more involved, we've got a seat for you, and let's have a conversation about what would be a great fit. So, yeah.
Let's talk about the annual meeting that just happened, right? Yeah. That takes a big chunk of your life, doesn't it?
We are extremely proud of the Nebraska State Bar Association's annual meeting. We get about 1,900 to 2,000 lawyers that come through that 3.5-day conference every year. There's CLE, public service, I like to describe it as the homecoming week for lawyers, right? Yes. We're bringing prosecutors, defense attorneys, judges, everybody together to celebrate, the legal community and get our professional development and move forward. And if you think about it, there's just under 6,000 active licensed lawyers in Nebraska, and we get 2,000 of them to come to this meeting. Yeah. And so I'm extremely thankful that is the culture here in Nebraska. When I talk with my counterparts in other states, some of them have stopped having their annual meeting because they can't get anyone to show up. And I'm just like, it makes me very appreciative of the culture that we have in our legal community here in Nebraska.
And I think it's by design. I mean, the annual meeting has become something that so many of us look forward to because it is engaging, and it is, and the CLEs are quality CLEs that you want, and there's a handful of free ones and there's a handful of ethics. So everybody that, and so there is access to
a little bit for everything.
Exactly.
Or a little bit for everyone. Yeah.
And every time I go, I can't go through the hall without seeing, it's almost like you said, a homecoming, and I get to see people that I used to practice with before, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that is a lot of work for you, though, right?
Well, I would like to just punt and say we have an amazing staff and team that spends a lot of time making sure that thing runs as smoothly as it does. So I don't like to take credit for how awesome the annual meeting is, because we have some staff members that just have that thing down. Yeah. And it runs itself with them at the helm. So
how large is the staff at the Bar Association?
So we have 22 full-time employees. Wow. And actually a significant number of them are the Volunteer Lawyers Project related. And that is possible because of kind of financial commitment through grant funds and philanthropic organizations who really see the need for engaging pro bono lawyers and in that work. And so when that program has really caused the growth in our staff size is just creating more opportunities for pro bono. So.
Now, the Bar Association just had an anniversary.
Yes.
Correct? Yes.
Yeah.
75?
125.
125. I don't know where I got that.
That's okay. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So it was fun.
What did you guys do? There was a...
Yeah. So we did like a commemorative video. We did a CLE tour across the state. That
was pretty incredible.
Ethics scenarios that lawyers face. There was some special content or a special issue of the magazine. Yeah. And I feel like the most interesting part for me was to have the opportunity to go back and look at those, like historical documents.
Yeah.
And, the idea that 125 years ago, people thought, wanted to shape the future of the legal profession, right? And found this structure to be, what could lead them and through navigating different times and evolving. And for the most part, that, structure is still here today. I do find it was back 125 years ago, dues to the association were $1.
That's incredible.
And so that's kind of a fun little fact to share. So
that's incredible. One of the things that I was a part of, I think it was last year, we established a lawyer's creed too.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think it's interesting that we didn't have one already.
Yeah.
But I think that was one of the things that I know you were really behind that. And I think that's an important thing.
And I think that, one of the things, back to kind of the changing of the profession and is there a decline in civility and professionalism? And I think the lawyer's creed is the response to that, right? Whether you're a brand new lawyer being sworn in or you're celebrating your 50th year of practice, there are some ideals that bind lawyers together as a profession. And it should be really the touchstone of how we practice, how we work together with each other. And I think that the language in the lawyer's creed is really meant to bring people back to that touchstone about why we're here and why the legal profession. So it's been nice.
And I just remember in the process, like every word was selected specifically.
Yes.
It was, and there was a lot of, I wouldn't say debate, but discussion about what words. So the word choice is so important, but I think it does envelop everything you just stated. So.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's hear, is there anything else about the bar that you want to talk about?
I think that's a good overview, but
that was amazing.
We'll see what else comes up. So
I don't know how you keep all those plates spinning. It's incredible.
Yeah, great team of people. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about you.
Sure.
Yeah. So on top of all of these things that you've accomplished, you have a family.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How long have you been married?
So my husband, Rob, and I it'll be 23 years in March.
Congratulations.
So, thanks. So, we met in O'Neill, Nebraska at the St. Patrick's Day Festival.
All the Nebraska listeners know about
yes,
that.
if you're from Nebraska, you know what that means. I think I was wearing a lime green polyester leisure suit when I met him. So just
how could he resist?
How could he resist? And you drink green beer all day and have a great time.
Right.
And I like to tell people that I heard him before I saw him. He has a very distinctive, deep voice, and he's the kind of person where if he is telling a story, everyone in the room is hanging on every word that he says. And so I kind of heard him and noticed him that way. And then I walked up to him and asked him if I could buy him a beer. And we've been together ever since.
Awesome. That is a power move right
there.
Yeah.
Yep. So I like to say it's the luck of the Irish that brought us together in O'Neill, Nebraska.
And it's worked for 23 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you have two sons.
We have 2 boys, and they are both graduating from the University of Nebraska Kearney in May. They've had a great experience out there. And I feel like, when you're reflecting about your career and things, like we all have a lot of accomplishments, but I feel like the most important thing that I've done in my life is raise 2 good people, right? Like it's just very rewarding to watch them, navigate college. They're applying to law school, kind of see what's next for them. So that's been great. But now that we're, empty nesters, we moved to the country. We've been reworking this property. I'm not exaggerating to tell you that I think my husband and I have physically, personally cut down over 150 cedar trees this year. It's been a lot of work, but we, really, really have enjoyed that. We have 3 dogs. We have 30 chickens. So it's a change in pace living in the country, and we've really enjoyed that.
It's so nice to have that retreat on a daily basis too, to just be able to unwind out in the country. So
very true.
That's awesome. So one of the things that I always talk with my guests about is who's influenced them. So is there anybody that comes to mind over the years that's just been a friend that supported you, or a mentor, or anybody like that?
Yeah. So, I feel like all of us have, teachers, coaches, family members that helped, influence us as we were developing. But since your podcast is kind of legal related, I've been reflecting a lot about those early mentors in my, or mentors in the early part of my career. And so when I started, as that undergraduate intern at the Nebraska State Bar Association, there were 3 people that I worked with, daily, weekly basis. And that was Jane Schoeneke, the former executive director of the Nebraska State Bar, John Gerard, who at that time was a Nebraska Supreme Court justice, now a U.S. District Court judge, and Linda Crump, who was with the University of Nebraska system and our second female first person of color to serve as president of the bar. Wow. And I feel like I just learned so much from them as a young person. And I it's not like I sat there and said, will you be my mentor? And, we,
right.
It was, they were just willing to take the time to, coach me and explain things and, support me. And, I just feel like even just being around them and watching how they navigated situations, ran meetings, examined issues, examined problems, really impacted the way that I approached things. And I'm having kind of a full circle moment this year because John Gerard is now president of the Nebraska State Bar Association. And so to have started my career with him and then to have him in this seat and we have the opportunity to work together again has been really great. So I've really enjoyed that.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
You and I were talking earlier before we got started about opportunities and how they just show up. And, life just takes these different turns and it's just, but you have to be open to them. And I feel like that's the same with mentors, you know, and it sounds like these are people that were placed in your life at the perfect time, but you were wise enough to soak it up, like you said earlier, and really learn from them.
Yeah.
And,
I've had so many conversations, I will often ask lawyers, like, what made you interested in the law? Or how did you, get into this profession? And so many people will say, someone just said to me, have you ever thought about law school? And that one conversation changed the rest of their life. And so I feel like it is, the opportunity or the seed gets planted, and that could happen to anybody any day. It still could happen, even though we're kind of further along in our career. So it's very, very cool. You just need to be open to the opportunity. So.
Absolutely. Is there anybody else beyond the legal field that actually helped you or mentored you even previous to getting involved with all of this?
I feel like I feel like naming people is dangerous because I'll leave I'll leave somebody out. But really, just I have the most amazing parents. I feel like everyone probably says that, but I feel like they've always been extremely supportive. They've always let me be myself. They've always been there when I needed them. And so I just shout out Joanne and Dave Neeley.
I love that.
Great job.
Are they close? Do they live?
Yeah. So my parents still live in Seward.
Nice.
They actually spend a lot of the year in Mexico. And so they're not around a ton, but they're always a phone call away. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there any other thing about the State Bar that you wanted to discuss or, there's the Lawyer Foundation. I know that a lot of people get confused with that.
Yep. So about 20 years ago, the Nebraska State Bar Association established the Nebraska Lawyers Foundation. And it is the charitable arm of the association. And it's meant to raise funds to support our charitable activities like the Volunteer Lawyers Project, the Nebraska Lawyers Assistance Program, our work on rural practice. And so we kind of use that vehicle to help fund those initiatives. One of the things that's a little confusing in our legal community is that there is another foundation called the Nebraska State Bar Foundation, which has a very similar name to us, but isn't affiliated with us in that they're not the charitable arm of the association. And they're also doing great work in the area of civics education, mock trial, law-related education, which I feel like is even, more important nowadays than maybe in previous generations. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's easily confused. A lot
of
people
the
don't realize.
the naming. Also, we're in the same building, and so I feel like we have some brand awareness issues on that. But yeah, the foundation's been really integral to helping fund some of the really great work of the association.
Yeah.
So,
and that's one thing I remember, like when I was on a committee, I'm like, how do we pay for all this? So, and then we see the budget and I'm like, so there's dues, of course, attorneys are paying dues, but then there is also a lot of philanthropy and people giving that really helps.
Very generous profession. So
right.
we're very thankful for that.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to get involved in the State Bar Association, just reach out to your office.
Reach out to our office. I think there's a lot of different ways lawyers can get involved. It can be, through pro bono. It can be writing an article for the magazine, attending a CLE, giving a CLE. There's just a variety of ways to get involved. So
the magazine is no joke either. I mean, it's a thick magazine, really well quality.
One of the interesting things I think as a state bar executive director, I get a lot of other state bar associations magazines get sent to our office. I'd put our magazine in the top 5 nationally. It is just incredibly substantive, and it is that way because our members are willing to contribute those substantive articles, right? It's nothing that we're doing as a staff. We just have this culture that people, I'm interested in this and I want to share it with the rest of the profession, and they're willing to take the time to draft those. And it really makes for a wonderful publication. Yeah,
there's a lot of attorneys in Nebraska that seem to be experts in their field. And it seems like a lot of those people are the ones that are contributing. So I reference that magazine a lot in past editions and stuff like that. Plus, I think it's fun to look through the pictures and kind of the who's who and what people are out and about doing. And then there's an issue every year that's the art.
The cover art, attorney art competition.
It is so interesting to see, and I'll see names in there of attorney artists that I would have had no idea.
Yeah, it's very fun. I think that actually that came about because we were running out of ideas for what to put on the cover of the magazine, and so I think another state bar had done, submit your art, we'll pick it, and so whoever wins becomes the cover of the magazine, which is really fun.
Yes. Yeah. Such a great idea. Well, it's amazing all the things that you've done with the State Bar.
Thanks.
And I thank you, and I know so many of the other attorneys in Nebraska really thank you. And you're always so charismatic, and you are the type of person that you have almost all the answers, but if you don't, you will find the answer.
Sure.
And you won't. Even when I asked you for a CLE reference for the Christmas party, the Sarpy County Bar Christmas party, I had forgotten about that. And then you followed up a few days later, and I'm just like, she's always on top of everything.
Thank you. That's nice.
Yeah. The other thing too, you're a golfer, right?
So I feel like I'm becoming a golfer. I strive to be mediocre at golf, but I really do enjoy it. And I have a great ladies golf team, which Mandy is a part of. And so we try to make it to a lot of the kind of state and local bar association related golf activities.
We have fun.
I don't know that we've ever won anything.
But we may have even been last.
Yeah, we're probably last most of the time, but we're having a great time while we do it.
No one has as much fun as we do.
That's true. I would believe that part.
Right.
So.
Well, thank you for coming today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. We're out of time. 45 minutes flies.
Oh, that went fast. Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in to Grateful by Lady Law. As you know, you can catch us on any of the places you see your favorite podcasts. So like Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, all of those places. Thank you so much, and we'll see you at the next episode. Thanks.
A Huda Media Production.